to perform miracles. This is Teachable Moments with April podcast Bible study. So in this particular episode, we're going to look at The Greatest Man Who Ever Lived. That's the book that we're studying. And we're at chapter 21 in Jesus' hometown synagogue. So this is the episode in which we look at the Bible verses that we're going to need to know in order to answer the questions and to learn more about Jesus. So we have Luke 4:16 through 30. Okay, we have 1 Kings 17:8 through 16, and then we have 2 Kings 5:8 through 14. So we're going to start with Luke 4:16 through 30. All right, so we start with scripture 16. He went to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. He began by saying to them, "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." All spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his lips. "Isn't this Joseph's son?" they asked. When Jesus said to them, "Surely you will quote this proverb to me, 'Physician, heal yourself,' and you will tell me, 'Do here in your hometown what we have heard that you did in Capernaum.' Now truly, I tell you," he continued, "no prophet is accepted in his hometown. I assure you that there are many widows in Israel in Elijah's time, when the sky was shut for 3.5 years, and there was a severe famine throughout the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a widow in Zarephath, in the region of Sidon, and there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha, the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. Now all the people in the synagogue were furious." That's what I said, furious. "When they heard this, and they got up, drove him out of town, and took him to the brow of the hill," the mountain, "on which the town was built, in order to throw him off the cliff." That's what I said. "But he walked right through the crowd and went on his way." Now that's what they said there. All right, so now we're going to go to 1 Kings 17:8 through 16. I just want to let everybody know I'm reading from Bible Gateway, and they have the New International Version. Okay, so now we're going to look at 1 Kings 17:8 through 16. Then the word of the Lord came to him, "Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food." So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?" And she was going to get it. He called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." So we already know that there was a famine, okay? "So as surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Oh my God. When I read that the first, I was like, oh my God. Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. So she went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. All right, so now we're going to read the last Bible reading. It's from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 8 through 14. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord, his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and he went off in a rage. Now Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. This is Teachable Moments with April podcast Bible study from The Greatest Man Who Ever Lived, chapter 21, in Jesus' hometown synagogue. Now there is no doubt a stir of excitement in Nazareth when Jesus returns home. Before he left to be baptized by John a little over a year before, Jesus was known as a carpenter, but now he is known far and wide as a miracle worker. The local residents are eager to see him do some of these marvelous works among them, and their anticipation rises as Jesus, according to his custom, goes to the local synagogue. Now during the services, he stands up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah is handed to him. He finds a place where it tells of the one anointed by Jehovah's Spirit, which place in our Bible today is chapter 61. Now after reading about how this one would preach a release to the captives, a recovery of sight to the blind, and about Jehovah's acceptable year, Jesus hands the scroll back to the attendant and sits down. Now all eyes are intently fixed upon him, and then he speaks, probably at some length, explaining, "Today, this scripture that you just heard is fulfilled." The people marvel at his winsome words and say to one another, "This is a son of Joseph, is it not?" But knowing that they want to see him perform miracles, Jesus continues and says this, "No doubt you will apply this illustration to me. Physician, cure yourself. The things we heard as having happened in Capernaum do also here in your home territory." Now evidently, Jesus' former neighbors feel that healing should begin at home for the benefit of his own people first. So they feel they have been slighted by Jesus. Now realizing their thinking, Jesus relates some applicable history. There were many widows in Israel during the days of Elijah, he notes, but Elijah was sent to none of those. Rather, he went to a non-Israelite widow in Sidon, where he performed, a life-saving miracle. And in the days of Elisha, there were many lepers, but Elisha cleansed only Naaman from Syria. Now, angered by these unfavorable historical comparisons,